Welcome to the Digital Workplace edition of the Tech Sessions podcast. In this session, we're going to be talking about the digital workplace strategy that your organization needs to be leveraging, all the benefits of having a digital workplace strategy, and the ways you're going to go ahead and develop one. I'm Al Solorzano, VP of our digital workplace practice here at E360, and I'm here with my co-host, Patrick O'Brien, Principal Architect here at E360. What's up, Patrick?
Hey.
Been here for quite some time. I've been really focused on this technology and these concepts around the digital workplace. And I'm really excited to bring some of these conversations to you that we've been having with a lot of our customers. So let's go ahead and just get right started. So Patrick, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things. First, let's get some context. What is a digital workplace and why is it relevant to our customers?
Well, thank you for asking the hardest question of the day right now. I always define the digital workplace as everything from the end user to the back of the data center. Because it's all connected. You can't say, oh, we care about the end user, but we don't understand Active Directory, or we don't understand storage or locality. And you really have a number of pieces that are interconnected. You have to worry about user profiles and identity, access to the data, locality to the data, performance on the device, how is the device connected and authenticated through the network. So it's a big web that covers a pretty broad sphere.
Yeah. So, but why is it relevant, right? Why does it matter to customers? Why does it matter to users? What do you usually talk about there?
Well, as we've seen over the last 4 years, users are very vocal if they don't like their experience. If you have to work from home and the experience is terrible, there's a chance you're going to start looking for another job. And on the flip side, if administrators have to manage an environment that is difficult to manage because of user experience problems, they might be looking for another job. I think is relevant to anybody in any business because a positive experience keeps a happy workforce, and a negative experience makes people start considering their options. So we really, it's a daily conversation for us with any business.
Yeah. I mean, I know I feel it when I see it as pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? Pre-COVID, we had a lot of, kind of the users always were coming into the office and having that in-office experience. COVID hit and immediately there was a response of everybody's got to figure out how to work remotely, right? And everybody did respond to that. And now we're kind of evolving into kind of like the next phase is just how do we optimize that experience? What do we do to make that user be able to have that hybrid workforce? And hybrid workforce is coming up quite often, right?
It really is. And to that point, that next phase, I think what the pandemic drove us to is ready, fire, aim, let's work out of the office. And the borderless office was born. We could all be connected. I mean, people were more productive than ever, and it was great. But like you said, nobody optimized anything. And now we're paying a fairly heavy technical debt of just shooting everybody out of the office. And now, how do we get our data back? How do we get our users to be in a place where they can seamlessly come into the office or work from home without having to have multiple logins and a different experience? They want a single sign-on, optimized, fluid, seamless, borderless office. And that really is this phase now. And I think that is probably the bulk of our conversations today. Oops, we hurried up 4 years ago. Now what do we do? So,
and I know when we sometimes we boil it down for customers to kind of like the three main talking points we've talked about, and you already hit on a couple of them, right? Identity, the data, and the device, right? That kind of trifecta of really what makes up a digital workplace. And there's a whole lot of other aspects, collaboration tools and application delivery solutions. But really, when you boil it down to identity, data, and device, where does somebody start, by having those conversations? I mean, where do we want to start with conversation on that?
Well, that's a heavy question because there's so many different requirements in this space. You could have an organization that has a concern with contractors or remote workers. And if somebody is terminated or leaves for another position or, retires, how do you get the data back? How do you get the device back? So we have a number of concerns around securing the endpoint management, preventing data exfiltration. There are a number of concerns around that. At the same time, we could have somebody say, we just acquired a business and we brought this new business unit on of 1,000 employees and everybody's complaining because it's slow and unusable. So Where where do we focus, or what's driving this? I think it's a lot. And the lazy consulting answer, it depends. I'll try not to say those two words again on this call, but it really does.
I know
There,
it really does, because every organization is always in a different stage in what they're doing with their digital workplace, right? I think that's important for a lot of our customers to understand, is like there's no one way of getting to a optimized digital workplace strategy. It's about understanding your current state and kind of evolving and iterating through different versions. So you talked about security, like that's a big piece of this, right? Because now that potentially this hybrid workforce is using personal devices or a mix of personal and corporate devices, security is a big deal. I know you've talked about experience a lot, right? Maybe you can talk about experience of why does this matter for customers and for our clients.
well, uh, digital employee experience, or DEX, is very, it's a hot topic now in end user computing, and really in, I'd say, any workforce in general now, because employees have been empowered. Really, the pandemic showed employers that employees can leave. They can go wherever they want. There is always a need to hire skilled people in your organization, whether you're in IT, manufacturing, biotech, big tech. It doesn't matter where you work. If you have skills, you're in demand. And if you go to work every day and it takes you 10 minutes to log in, it's painful. You have to go through several layers of authentication, and it's just cumbersome. You're not going to be happy as an end user, as that worker. At the same time, administrators, there's a lot of migration right now. People are job hopping or moving on to other opportunities in the IT administration side. Whether it's they've outsourced their IT and you have, contractors overseas or staff in-house. If they don't like managing it, they can go get another job. So that's really, that for me, that user experience piece is the most important, because if you don't have the user, you don't have a business, right? Uh, that comes up for me all the time. And
Yeah,
that's
and I think that leads to another conversation we have often, which is productivity, right? And efficiencies. Like from a user's perspective, like you mentioned, if it takes me 10 logins to get to my application, that's probably not a great experience, and it's causing me to kind of delay to actually get to that, my actual work completed. But of course, that has a business impact, right? That has a financial cost associated with the organization. That if their personal Wi-Fi is having problems, if their internet is having issues, if their device has to constantly be rebooted for patches and things like that, that affects productivity and actually has an impact on the bottom line, for a lot of our customers. Maybe we want to talk about that a little bit.
I productivity is it's another loaded word, because we found that people working remotely could be just as or more productive. I know personally, working from home for the last few years, people have no problem booking calls back to back to back to back to back throughout the day. There's no time to walk between meetings. You just work 8, 10 hours a day, no problem. But if between every meeting you have to, like you said, do multiple logins or change systems, and it's very cumbersome, that can be worse than having to commute to an office. So we have to find that balance of meeting compliance requirements, meeting, whatever the business needs are for authentication and security, but at the same time making it seamless for the user. And we've talked a lot about multi-factor authentication, and there's the pros and cons of that. The ability to do things like single sign-on and how to carry that user's identity throughout the network. And firms are really focused on that now. And we're talking about how to integrate all these systems in the back end. So if a user logs in, that session or that token can carry through seamlessly. Users like that. They don't like logging in multiple times for the same desktop or the same application.
Yeah. I think productivity of finding data with all the locations that data could potentially reside these days. It's what, back in the day, we used to call them portals, and now there's, integrations with dashboards and integrations with platforms like Microsoft Teams is a good example, that's trying to consolidate all the applications and experiences and workflows that are needed for productivity. So all those are coming into play for sure. Um, I do want to drill down on digital employee experience a little bit. One thing that I hear quite often is they're kind of, is there a need for it? Of course, we'll get to that, but maybe a better understanding about what it means. Because what I hear often is some of the tools that are out there. Let's talk about like website employee interaction, or sorry, digital experience when it comes to websites. Things like, hey, I want to know that 5 items were added to the dashboard or into the cart and only 3 were purchased. Why was that? It took extra 5 seconds to go find a search, and that's why we're losing business. So I see that on the consumer website conversations, which is really where experience is starting from. But now we're talking about the employee experience. So maybe talk about some of that a little bit to say like what kind of data are they able to see and understand what that impact looks like.
Well, another big word that comes up a lot is observability. And observability is important because as an organization, being able to see the data is key. So what can we capture now? Things like how long does it take a user when they click a button? How long does it take them to actually get into their session? How long does it take that application to launch? When they are connecting into your network, what is the network performance? How many different hops that they have to make through the environment to get to the data or to the applications? And then even more abstract than that, when are users not happy? And how can you map that? And certain solutions now have self-serve where you can do something as simple as click a smiley face if you like it, or click an angry face if you don't. And that data gets passed to the IT organization and to business leaders who can see, hey, this user's not happy. What's the problem? Oh, their logon time was delayed. It took a minute to get in instead of 10 seconds like they were expecting, or their performance is poor, and they can peel back the data and see what the problem is. Sometimes it's the business's fault. Maybe they have a missed configuration. Other times it's something as simple as, oh, we see that users at home and their Wi-Fi latency is quite high. So let's call them and tell them reboot their router. And all of this feeds into keeping the employee happy, keeping them knowledgeable and aware. And if I'm told, hey, the problem is restart your router and it fixes everything, I'm happy. I'm not just angry at my keyboard. This sucks. I don't like it. So
Yeah.
that's I mean, there are so many things that you can feed into these systems. Performance of every process application. You can really dive into it if you choose
Yeah, we
to.
used to we used to call that like the last mile, right? What are the things that IT can see within the data center, right? And has all these tools to see what's going on within the data center. But as soon as it gets out to the internet, down to that endpoint, down to that person's networking, and they're in a Starbucks, you lose that visibility, you lose that observability, right? So some of the tools that are out there are definitely kind of focusing on that experience. And if you have a corporate policy that states, we are not going to support you on a Starbucks Wi-Fi, great example, right? And you're like, hey, for security purposes, for performance purposes, we can't guarantee you the same experience.
Right.
Or you're sitting by your pool super far away from your Wi-Fi versus sitting right next to it, right? Those are two different experiences, and being able to have that data from an IT. So last mile, let's call it that, right? So a lot of the same terms, right? It just means different things, observability and everything else in there. Makes sense. So, when we're having these conversations, because of what's been going on in the industry for many years, does digital workplace just mean VDI? And how do we kind of have those conversations with customers?
You know, I really don't think so. Maybe at one time you could argue it did, but more and more times now, users don't need a full desktop. They need access to an application. And they can get to that application from a cell phone, from a tablet, from a laptop, from a desktop. There are times you don't need a full desktop, whether it's Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever. You don't need a desktop anymore. So that I think right there eliminates VDI as the only option for digital workplace, because now you can have a user who can log into Microsoft for a Power BI report. They can log into ServiceNow to check out a ticket. They can log into SAP to do whatever they need to do in SAP or Salesforce. Any of these solutions, they can get to it, whether it's software as a service and they just go to a website, or the employer is publishing everything to them, whether it's shortcuts or through a portal. Many firms still call them portals, so I'm going to go with that. But whether they have this landing page, portal, what have you, employers can commonly provide this solution, these solutions in one place, and they don't need a full desktop to do it. So I think all the experience and the access to the data, it's the entire workplace, whether
Yeah,
there's
it's every application, right? SaaS-based apps, client server apps, hosted applications. I think, one of the things that we're seeing is that even things like leveraging conditional access. We've talked about that quite often with a lot of customers, is being able to determine which of your portfolio applications require you to be maybe on the corporate network from a corporate device with a VPN client or through a VDI session versus ones that you're like, you know what, anybody can access it from anywhere. It's low priority data, or that we don't need as much compliance type rules. So no, I think those are relevant because I think, like you said, it started off with, virtualized applications 20, 30 plus years ago in some cases, and still a viable option for a lot of customers, a lot of organizations, a lot of use cases. But now we're running into those. All right, well, what else is possible, right? Enterprise browser functionality. We'll talk about that during some of the conversations. But even just the local management type tools, leveraging local devices. So, oh, those are some good insights. Anything else you want to follow up with before we jump into some other segments in terms of employee experience?
Uh, no, I mean, I think even firms that don't necessarily believe or invest in things like digital employee experience probably should, because I'm sure they've had turnover over the last few years because somebody wasn't happy with the tools. And whether they like their manager or not is irrelevant if they can't do their job and they're miserable logging into their machine every day. So really taking some time to review the process and see how your end users are functioning, whether it's customers or contractors or business partners or employees are using your systems, you can make it a better experience for everybody at fairly minimal cost. So that's really my takeaway is it's important. If you don't have end users, you probably don't have a business.
Yeah, and as a user, if you don't have access to data or applications, there's you got problems there too.
Exactly.
All right, so let's have some conversations on business impact around having a good digital workplace strategy. I know one I personally love to talk about is talent acquisition and retention. You already talked about the retention part. I know I've had a lot of conversations with customers around, um, again, post COVID, everybody had to be hired within 30, 40, 50 miles of the office,
Right.
of a physical corporate office. You had a couple of people that were allowed to work from home, and then COVID hit and everybody had to work remote. And in some cases, over the last couple of years, those users have moved away or requested to move away from the corporate office, taking care of elderly parents, moving to a cheaper location, just getting out of certain areas, whatever they wanted, like whatever the reason was. But that retention and acquisition kind of strategy, I think, is something that a lot of organizations are struggling with, right? And we've had numerous conversations on why the digital workplace strategy is helping and address those. Any other comments on that?
Well, the other side of that, I think that's fairly compelling is because we have such mature and understood solutions now for how to access data and how to work collaboratively over many, many miles or states or continents. You've seen big tech firms pull up out of the Bay Area in California or Silicon Valley, move to Texas, move to the Midwest because they can, leaving their manufacturing site in Silicon Valley or leaving a research lab. They're moving their headquarters because their leadership and their business units can still work seamlessly because now they have voice and video calling that can be fairly optimized. Like you're right next to each other. You can have access to data that feels like milliseconds instead of states or continents away. And because we have these solutions in place, businesses can pick up and move. You can hire from anywhere, you can work from anywhere, and that goes for the brick and mortar business as well as every employee.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories is, let's just say it was a place that hired a bunch of rocket scientists. Let's just say that,
Okay.
and what they were struggling with was they had to find the best rocket scientist within 30 miles of their office because of where it was located. It was costly, and it was very tough to get to, traffic wise. And so they were finding that talent was hard to find. Then they also found that the people that they had hired and maintained them, they're smartest guys that were like, hey, look, I'm either getting a job offer that's in another city or I want to move. I love this place. I want to get out of here. So now this kind of having a strategy around the digital workplace has allowed them to really still secure the data, maintain their identity and manage the device uh, through many miles away now, globally, in fact. and they could hire the best rocket scientist or retain the best rocket scientist without necessarily having to keep them in the office. So one of my favorite stories to talk about, because I feel like that's a huge benefit of having a good digital workplace strategy, where not having one results in you saying, I can only hire people 30 minutes away. So that's a good
Right.
one. Another common one, mergers and acquisitions. Let's talk about that one. Go for it.
Well, M&A has always been an area of interest for a lot of, larger companies, investment firms, what have you. And the pain has always been two IT organizations having to mash everything together. Now, with a robust digital workplace outlook, you can give them a login to your system and say, oh, log into this, whether it's a Citrix or a VMware or an AWS Workspaces or Microsoft AVD or Windows 365. Give them a log on. They can come in and start using your systems day one without a painful migration of users, migration of data. And you can do that in parallel or on the back end separately, bringing legacy data over or new data in. Whatever you choose to do, you can shorten your runway considerably. You can start working day one if you want to, and you have those back end systems in place already.
Yeah. Another good example I've had from a customer of ours. Again, their business strategy was to grow through mergers and acquisitions. And, IT tended to find this out too late, right? They typically would find it out the day before it went public, or even days after it went public, they would find it out. And so IT was then tasked with, get these guys integrated because we want to return our investment, right? We made an investment in this organization, get them in. And one of our clients, what we did is we helped to develop basically the IT answer to mergers and acquisitions, right? So we basically came up with a strategy, which basically was a digital workplace strategy. We just didn't call it that, 20 years ago. And when we built that mergers and acquisitions strategy, that allowed them to basically kind of have a cookie cutter model. And now we've taken that same strategy to some of our other customers and said, hey, look, if that's your business model, and now that we understand that, here is your cookie cutter model that you can bring in. And again, look, I'll be honest, not every acquisition is cookie cutter, right? Everyone's got some one-offs.
Sure.
But the idea there is to try to do whatever 80-20 rule, 90-10 rule, whatever you can get to say, hey, this is how we're going to get the return on our investment as quick as we possibly can. Then we can start consolidating, like you mentioned, identity can get down to a single identity. Then we can get down to one data repository. And we all manage the devices through the same technologies and concepts. And then we're building out the collaboration tools and this technology stack so that they're all consolidated, as opposed to leave those guys alone for the next 10 years and we're double paying for things, right? Because that's typically what we would see. So even though you got your investment, you actually have doubled your cost because you have so many tools in place and trying to get them all managed. Not to
And
mention the experience, like we've talked about.
and the added cost of when you need to go through something like an insurance audit or a compliance audit. Now they have to spend twice as long looking through your books because you have two sets of them, two sets of file servers, two data centers potentially. So having the ability to move everybody in potentially day zero is great for showing your regulators and your compliance people we're putting this together. They're moving into one system, and you can sunset all these old systems and stop double paying as you move out of them.
So let's talk about next topics. So again, where does having a good digital workplace strategy help for like business resiliency? What kind of conversations are you having with customers around that?
Well, the legacy answer to resiliency was okay, something broke. We're going to call Iron Mountain. We're going to get a tape backup trucked in. We're going to reload our data and build the servers. We'll be back online in 2 or 3 days. Now you can have a hot copy of your data in a disaster recovery site, depending on your requirements for DR, disaster recovery. You could have a secondary site with a single login to both and have everything automated. If I'm a user and I'm trying to log into data center A and it's down, I don't know it's down. I'm getting routed to data center B. Certain applications are now hosted in the cloud, which helps resiliency and log on because if Microsoft or Amazon has an outage in the West, they're probably online in the East and you could still get to your data potentially. So you're able to really spread out and it's not to the detriment of the end user anymore. They don't have to know 10 different logons, 10 different passwords. It's a single sign-on, whether the system is local in your data center, hosted in the cloud, or in a DR site somewhere. The user doesn't know.
Yeah, the
And
user
giving
shouldn't
them
care.
and they shouldn't care because to them it's a seamless experience. Being able to offer that to your users, it makes business leader lives easier because now they don't hear complaining if there's an outage. Oops, a telephone pole fell over. Now we're out of business for a day. Like you don't have that conversation anymore. If you employ these strategies, you're able to stop caring because you have everything in place. Your user can get to work and your teams can repair and get back online
Yeah.
without.
And business resiliency these days, I think, has opened up more conversations than just like IT, disaster recovery, backup stuff. I think of it as like, what was the response during COVID, right? Are you going to have a business? Do you have employees? How do you get them to function and work? Like you mentioned, the someone cutting a fiber line or backing up into a pole. I think we've all had stories where we hear things like that. But even personal experiences where, like, my internet goes down and I got 5 meetings to get set up for that day, right? What do? I have a MiFi hotspot. I'm able to go to another location. I can just go to anybody else's house and still have access to some of the same security and the same capabilities. So it kind of all adds up to even like user resiliency when it comes from the business side, but it affects how the business functions. And again, also we used to talk about, every piece of data had to be stored in the data center, right, back in the day, because that was the only way that we could back up and maintain it. But now with a lot of these collaboration tools, there's local copies of the data, there's files and synchronization, SaaS-based applications. So I think all of those come into play, right?
Yeah, it really comes down to, and I'm trying not to say it depends, but it really comes down to requirements here. If the firm is able to spread their data out, whether it's like you said through a SaaS application or through something like a Teams or a OneDrive or a share file or whatever their collaboration tool happens to be, if users have access to that from any internet connection on earth, they can still do their job and still access files and still work with their team. So it has really reduced downtime, and I think that improves efficiency and return for any business.
Yeah. And you're able to handle all the weird situations that occur in life, such as a tree falling on your house and taking out something, right?
Yeah.
So another one, because it kind of relates to how businesses are kind of evolving. We're seeing a lot of customers of ours that have been using contractors and third-party partners, and trying to figure out how to give them, access to the corporate data, but you don't necessarily manage or own that device. So maybe talk about how digital workplace has helped dealing with contractors and third-party use cases.
And I think this has been a pain point for firms for a long time. If you outsource a business unit to India or South America or wherever, somewhere far away on the globe, there can be significant difficulty in getting back to the data. This again, 20 years ago, it sort of been a very different answer than today. But now, with broadband internet being very common throughout the world, you can extend your workplace to another continent if you want to. You give users a secure logon. You can use endpoint management tools. iGel comes to mind immediately, where you can give somebody a bootable thumb drive and they boot into your environment for their workday and they unplug and they're back on their corporate owned endpoint by the end of the day. So you can work with a variety of solutions to secure the endpoint or use something like Intune. You can manage endpoints that way if you want to have someone enroll. At the same time, there's an inherent risk. You have a contractor; they're not an employee of yours. Maybe data gets lost, maybe data gets mishandled, and now you might be liable for something. So through digital workplace strategy, you can do things like watermark a screen. You can keep data from being able to come out of your network. You can actually prevent the ability to copy paste, for instance. You can prevent files being pulled out because they have no way, they're not actually on your network. They're looking at a screen of your network. It really, again, comes down to requirements, but we can really secure, really secure that contractor or third party use case through a variety of ways. And at the same time, allow better user experience for them because they're coming in from overseas. And that could be a horrible logon time. It could make data hard to access. It could make the experience miserable because it's laggy or slow. And you can use solutions and modern protocols to, offer the best compression and the best performance.
Yeah, one of the use cases I've had that came up, or conversations I had with a customer around their third-party contractors, was not only did they sign an agreement to outsource a specific task, that task had some certain number of SLAs associated with it. They were supposed to perform X number of transactions or X number of calls.
Mhm.
And if they breached that term, the contracting company was going to owe them back. On the flip side, the contracting company said, well, if we can come up with a huge number of reasons of why we can't meet that SLA, we'll never have to pay that difference, right? So typically there was a lot of things like, well, your performance is slow. I can't get access to the things I need to get to. And so when we've had those conversations with customers about what they're doing with contractors and third parties, it tended to be whatever they did for their physical PC deployment was immediately replicated. When we're having the conversations, we're opening the door to, hey, there's other ways of doing this, right? There's other ways that we can leverage these solutions. And again, not that we're trying to come up with 1,000 different corner cases for customers, but there definitely are very common corner cases that need to be addressed, such as providing an external non-employee access to data and be able to do workflows in your environment. That's a very common use case. You got to come up with some strategies around that. So definitely a good conversation for getting started around digital workplace. That's great.
Well,
So let's
and
talk. Oh, go ahead.
before we leave that, you talked about being able to hold a contractor liable with SLAs and the contractor being able to turn it around on you. That's where things like we'll talk about observability again. Being able to see the session from the contractor's endpoint overseas to your data center and proving it's working or being able to see why it's not working, I think offers tremendous value. Being able to see, G.I. Joe famously said, knowing is half the battle. And if you having that observability into the session allows you to know and act on any knowledge gained.
Excellent. So let's talk about role of IT leadership, right? So now we're starting to talk about where does IT leadership come into play and trying to develop and drive that digital workplace. And I don't like to use the word transformation that often, but really you are transforming, right? You are changing the organization. It's just become, digital transformation was a big word for a while there, right? But
Mm-hmm.
conceptually, where do you think, where should the role of IT leadership start around developing a digital workplace strategy?
That's another toughie because you have a number of different constituencies all pitching in on what that strategy should be. You have end users complaining that it's slow. You have finance people saying it's too expensive. You have operations people saying they need better security or better performance. So you have a number of different constituencies who care about that. I think it really goes into, overall vision. What does your business need today? Are you providing service out to customers? Are you manufacturing? And we can look at what are you actually doing? Like, do you have facilities you need to offer secure access to? Do you have remote workforces everywhere? What are we doing today? And there are a variety of technologies to choose from to really support and hit those goals and support your dreams as a business. So I think first step is hearing from your constituencies and choosing technologies that support that, whether it's end user experience or IT service management, observability into sessions. If it comes to security to, make compliance folks happy, we have to make sure we check the boxes for your business requirements and choosing the right technologies to help you do that.
I think we see a lot of organizations try to boil the ocean because there's a lot of pieces that you just talked about, right? You didn't even mention security in that particular wording, though we've been talking about it a lot today. Um, when we're seeing customers having all these conversations, right? What I tend to focus on is like you need to build that vision, right? That vision for the organization. Now, like you said, that does require you to understand where are you at today, right? Where are you at today? Where do you want to be in the future, right? Building kind of like that plan and that roadmap and really trying to understand, what are the business objectives for the organization? Maybe it is some of the things we already talked about, acquisition of talent, hiring, mergers and acquisitions, resiliency contract, whatever it happens to be, and others, right? Um, but you got to kind of build that vision based upon understanding where you're at today, where are you trying to get to, and then kind of how do you kind of fit in all these solutions as you're moving forward. So I know that definitely comes up. You already mentioned technology selection. That's another big one, right? Understanding all the technology stacks that are out there And in many organizations, we used to call those the black ops IT, right? That stuff that's behind the scenes and no one really knows about. It's being purchased by somebody else. Those have always been tried to get pulled in, and there's always a reason that somebody has for, oh, this is why I have to use this one tool. And that's fine, right? But you're trying to develop that strategy around that 80-20, 90-10 type rule, right? As we're kind of moving forward. So technology selection is a biggie. I think you already talked about balancing of like security and usability. You want to hit on that one again? Because I think that's another big um, focus of why IT leadership needs to step in, because it does need to balance, right?
I think that balance is the key word there, because you can always add more security. You can make a user have to re-log in for every keystroke. I mean, that would be incredibly painful,
Oh
but
man, that would hurt so
it
bad.
would hurt so badly, right? But every menu you click, log in again, prove it's you, MFA prompt to your phone. Like, you could really make users jump through a lot of hoops.
Yeah, hold the camera up to your face to make sure it's you on every single keystroke,
Yeah,
right?
retinal scan on every login. But the reality is, if you're providing that kind of experience to end users or to IT having to manage it, they're probably not going to stay very long. I mean,
Yeah.
that gets to a point where it's just unusable. So providing usability but maintaining security, that's the balancing act, right? And a lot of firms have made the mistake of being a little too lax on security. And we've seen that. You know, there've been a number of breaches and a number of oopsies in the news over the last several years, where they left a default password here, or they didn't enforce MFA there, and so on. You know, accounts get hacked on Facebook without MFA, email gets hacked without MFA. So there are a number of things you can add in place. And I said MFA about 5 times, but you could add something like multi-factor authentication to prompt somebody on their cell phone. You have a much higher likelihood that it's a real human being logging in your system, and the human being you want to be logging in, because you're texting their cell phone or sending a push notification to their phone. You know, there are definitely sweet spots you can hit there of adding the correct tools in place. You know, complex passwords, MFA, only allowing access to the data that's part of your job role, and that comes to data classification. That comes to, you know, correct security group enrollment and user group enrollment. So there are things you can put in place to make sure your employees can do their jobs without pain, but they can't get hacked and run wild through your network taking everything. So we just have
And
to find
I think that
balance.
leads to the next one is education and communication, right? I know I've been in a lot of conversations. As a user, I think we've all experienced that scenario where something got rolled out and we were like, whoa, what happened? Oh, something has decided, or security has decided that we're going to enable this function, and it breaks how I'm productive I am, or things like that. Or education, new features being rolled out, constantly happen, especially now that, basically a lot of either things are SaaS based or managed by updates, or apps are pushed out from your phone, and understanding how fast these features are coming out. So maybe talk about where like education and communication are key from like IT leaders.
Well, I already quoted GI Joe on knowledge, so I think I've already shot the moon on this one. But uh, really, that is the thing: is things are coming out faster than ever. Exploits are coming out faster than ever, and being aware, training your end users to be aware of, you know, uh, some incredibly basic exploits that are still very effective. Things like phishing, you know, things like not leaving your computer unlocked if you do go to Starbucks. You know, you have to protect the digital workplace as an end user, because you are responsible for it. You know, if data gets leaked on your session, they'll see it with all of these observability tools I talked about. So make sure you do the basics, stay vigilant, keep learning, and uh, listen to your IT group, because they're learning too. I mean, every day it's astounding how often phishing is the cause of billion-dollar data settlements that come out when a big tech firm gets breached. It was phishing in the IT organization, and we're in the news again.
Yeah. I think we've already also hit on monitoring and feedback loops, right? We've hit on that a little bit. That's kind of another piece where IT leaders need to step in and have a good understanding about what kind of metrics they're measuring, being able to report and communicate on those metrics and have that feedback loop. So whether it's a happy face or smile, or a sad face about your experience as a user, or just understanding the metrics about the daily use of the experience. I think that's the last piece I would probably throw out there for where IT leaders can kind of step in. Um, So next question I have, and we'll probably go a little quickly on this one because I want to get to a couple more questions. Um, Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go with this one. I do want to summarize. How about let's summarize where we were just talking about where IT leaders, the practice, what should be done. So I'm going to summarize by saying, where do clients start with building a digital workplace strategy? I'm going to summarize by saying you need to create that vision, understanding the business goals. What are you trying to do? And where are you trying to get to? Understanding where your current state is of the technology stack that you have, which includes the technology selection solutions and conversations. We talked about that. Mapping those all to some sort of key initiatives and projects would be the next phase that I typically would talk about.
Mhm.
And then we said monitoring, evaluating, iterating, right? And really kind of understanding it as you're making all these changes. Because again, you can make a decision today, and we've had this, right, Patrick, which is decisions made today, and then 2 months later, new technology comes out that we're like, ooh, that's actually kind of interesting, right? That's a new way of doing things. So always being able to pay attention and reiterate what you're doing, again, without losing focus on that higher level strategy of what you're trying to achieve. Right?
Yeah.
So let's get some rapid fire questions on you, Patrick. Um, let's talk about. I would love you to name what are the three most common things that affect the user's experience, and IT doesn't have the tool set to see. What are the three things you typically see?
Okay. Bring your own device endpoints. So if a user is using their own laptop or their own computer at their home, really there are two pieces there. IT typically can't see into their home network. So their home internet, home network, and also that endpoint. Because the business doesn't own that endpoint, they can't manage it very effectively. So those are a couple of biggies there. A third, well, I just blew my answer on two of them.
We'll go back and rename the question to name two things that affect the
Perfect. I
users.
was
No,
say
I'm just
it's
kidding.
it's the endpoint is probably the biggest though. That's the biggest struggle in the BYO initiatives that firms have put out there.
Yeah,
If they
because I think you're summarizing it, which is basically it's really about that user side, that last mile that typically IT can't see, especially when it's whether it's a contractor owned device or a personal type device, right? I think that's their internet connection, their Wi-Fi. All of those are definitely great answers. So let's talk about future. So kind of if you could summarize, what your prediction is as some of the most significant change coming to the digital workplace strategy over the next couple of years.
well, uh, many tech manufacturers, tech vendors, uh, the phrase generative AI. Gen AI is probably huge. I mean, Microsoft has Copilot, for instance, and that has already started making tremendous impacts throughout many enterprises. So being able to leverage AI and put solutions in place to help, and it could be something as mundane as having an internal self-service help desk module. Hey, my email's locked out. Oh, and the AI can respond, I see that. Please confirm you're logging with the correct password. Click this button to unlock. Like it can take some of the burden off of a help desk with basic self-service tasks up to allowing people to do their jobs faster and better and more effectively. Pull all the financial numbers for the last 3 years, put them together in this format, and spit out a table, and it will do it in 30 seconds instead of 2 days. So being able to optimize people's time, I think you're going to see a significant integration of AI with everything we do today.
Sounds great. I definitely have already seen some of that impact, and I think we're going to continue to see more evolution in there. So if a customer is going to be starting this path, going down through, building a digital workplace strategy, what's like the first step if they're like, hey, look, if I just got to make one step right now, I got to get something in to kind of start kind of understanding what's going on. Kind of what technology, what solution, what concept would you kind of preach to them as being the first step? Again, not again, vision and strategy is important and you got to build that, but we know that takes time, right? We know that takes time. In the meantime, they got initiatives, they got problems. What do we do?
Well, if you have problems, what are we do? What's the user experience? What is the problem? And having a tool and starting with a tool or tools in place to be able to see what are the problems. Like, can you elaborate on the problems? Do you see what's actually causing the problems? Whether it's, again, data is getting lost or miscategorized. You can see, you can put in tools to see who's touching what. You can see how the user experience is. So anything in that digital employee experience space is probably going to offer uh, an eye-opening experience for many leaders, because they'll see problems they didn't even know they had that users are begrudgingly dealing with, or IT has misdiagnosed. Now they can find them and remediate them fairly quickly because now they know what the problems are. So I would start with something like that.
Yeah.
You want me
And
to
I, and
name some companies, for instance, or that
I
offers?
think we're good. I think digital employee experience, I think, is the good idea, because I think, like you said, it's the pain point, right? Where's the pain? Go fix the pain.
Yeah,
Now, does that mean you're done? No, right? It just means got to solve the pain first, and then be able to move on to the more holistic approach,
right.
and kind of building something out. So that makes sense. So, what about any other technology advancements or concepts that you find that are resonating or coming up often with customers?
I think a big one is, and you mentioned enterprise browser already, but I think that's becoming a very, very uh, crucial bit for a lot of our large enterprises. Because now, if they have to deal with contractors or business partners, third parties they deal with, common use case is a manufacturer sells products at the retail level. So they sell them directly from their website or, through stores, through Amazon, but they also sell them through retail places like Target or Walmart. So it's a very well-known retail brand. And to deal with warranty claims and RMAs, the retail employees at these retail stores have to be able to log in and process that warranty issue or process the RMA. And the manufacturer uses enterprise browser to extend their network to a single web page in their network out to these retail stores without opening up their entire network. So being able to extend just the bits of your network out securely without opening the door to everything, that's a big deal. And it's a technology that has matured quite a bit over the last 2 or 3 years. So we're going to see a lot more of that, where firms can offer very tightly secured parts of the network out to the world with minimal risk. And
Yeah,
enterprise
especially for those
browser doesn't
SaaS
open.
and web-based apps. Exactly. Right. That makes sense. Um, what about zero trust? Where does zero trust kind of fall into that space?
Everything is zero trust now. So zero trust, I think for me, and I think also everybody will give you a different definition on what zero trust means, or zero trust network access, ZTNA. Everyone will give you a different answer, but really it comes down to nobody can wander into your network and touch things because you don't trust them. So you force them to log in, you force them to get a prompt to log into each part of the network. Like if they're moving from their email to OneDrive, they get an authentication prompt on their phone. So making sure they pass every checkpoint to go through the environment, minimal inconvenience to the user, maximum security for the organization. It still, I think, hits that balance fairly well. That's, I think, always been a big deal. And in light of some of these incredibly high profile breaches where people could wander into very large networks and grab data everywhere, would have been prevented or minimized with a zero trust approach. So you're seeing a lot of firms take this strategy on now.
Sounds good. So I think we're going to wrap this up. I want to say thank you, Patrick. Really, really appreciate your time and your knowledge and your experience having the conversations with customers. I think I'll wrap it up with one thought, which is, the digital workplace strategy that your organization is either has has one and you don't know it, right? Or it doesn't have one, but you've kind of have something patched and kludged together, right?
Yeah.
Really got to understand where you guys are at, to understand where are you at today? Where are you moving towards? And how can we as E360 help you kind of move forward with those technologies, those concepts, and those strategies to make you more productive, make your business a better, more profitable, to align towards where your growth is from your executive perspective. That's kind of our goal and our focus around what we do. So really want to say appreciate your time. Hopefully you got a little bit of good information from this. Hopefully you got a lot of information from this. Definitely there's some conferences around digital employee experience. There's conferences around end user computing. There's conferences around, physical endpoint management and all those solutions that are out there. Definitely take a look at some of those conferences. I know we'll be at a lot of them. I would also recommend you go ahead and check out our website, e360.com, Follow us on LinkedIn and on Twitter. We always have or X, sorry. And we have a lot of content that we generate and have conversations with customers on the social media pages. But just want to say thanks to everybody. Again, thank you, Patrick. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks. It was a pleasure. Have a great day.